Alright, cool. So when I came home today, I put my key into the lock. Tell me why the lock completely disintegrated. And it's dark now, early. So it disintegrated into the dark of the night. And I'm just like, can I just get into my house? Anyway, hallo, wie geht's dir? I am your host, your resident emotional cactus. My name is Dot. Welcome. I guess welcome back. This is a podcast 2, episode 2. I don't even know. But today we're gonna continue to talk about all of the fun things that I've been through with my family. And something that I really want to talk about today is this idea that, and I can't remember if I went into this in the last podcast a little bit, but I'm gonna go more in depth about how I had a family system that was just like aggressive about making sure that I was never ever seen as being able to excel in anything. And like I said, I can't remember and I don't care. This is my channel. If you don't like it, click off the video. Stop listening. It's still a free country for a little while longer. So, again, we will see how long that lasts. We will see how long that lasts. So I think in the last episode I went a little into how I am someone who is a very creative person, right? I have no aptitudes for STEM. I had no aptitudes for math, like none of that. I just don't. It is simply not my nature. And I think I mentioned in the last podcast, none of my siblings are super geniuses either. I'm just extremely unattuned to math, and they're normal at math. But if you compare someone who's extremely bad at math to someone who's okay at math, it does make you look like a genius. So, there are a couple of things that I want to go back through just because, for myself, something I'm working through now as I continue to sort of move forward. And this podcast is even part of it. It's doing the creative things that I wanted to do as a kid, but now I can do them as an adult. Because it was almost painful for my mom. The one or two, I can only remember of one time during a summer where she just randomly signed me up for something. I think it was a pottery class for beginners, something like that. Something that was attuned. And I was maybe 10 or 11. I was an older kid, but I wasn't anywhere near like being at the level where I would be able to understand what was going on. But it was like painful for her to watch me come back out of that class and to have clearly enjoyed myself, right? Cause she never asked me, well, how did class go? Are you enjoying class? What did you do? She would drop me off. I'd go in, I'd meet my teacher, and I think I was the only like younger kid in the class just because it was like really close to the beginning of school. And our school started later, I think, but it was like, I don't know, 20 somethings who didn't really have anything to do and they were going into college or something like that, right? She wouldn't ask me like, how was it? What did you, like, you know how when you drop a kid off and you're trying to engage them about what they did? Never did that shit. She would just be angry or pout the whole way home. And I think I realized, like, there's something about me being able to thoroughly enjoy, or even just know what I enjoy, and to really have, like, a deep love for a creative pursuit that would just make her angry. And again, that's a huge part of like some of my stuckness with my mom is not understanding why my genuine happiness or joy or like being completely absorbed into something and just like in the zone, in my lane, in my element. Do you know what I mean? I didn't understand for a very long time why that like unearthed this deep rage in her. It never made sense because why are you angry? Why are you irritated? Why are you sort of resentful or trying to be contemptuous? Because I think at this point there was a level of jealousy there, which is very uncomfortable. You're jealous that I have things that make me happy? What? How miserable are you? And then I didn't understand because she was I think I also said this in the last episode, but I can't remember. She's a compulsive oversharer. There were zero boundaries. So she was always going off on tangents about how miserable she was, how miserable her childhood was, how miserable her adolescence was, how miserable her marriage was. Like, just, I'm misery. And I'm like, okay. Why are you trying to force that on other people at all? Much less one of your minor children. Right? It would make her angry. And even though, again, this was another situation where she didn't ask me if I wanted to go. She didn't ask me if I was interested. It was just one of those things where it's put your shoes on, you're doing this for the next 6 weeks now. And just randomly dropping me off at this place she'd never been in. Thank God the teacher was a good person, but what the hell? Anyway, so just completely... So she let me finish the class because she had paid for it in advance. But I don't ever remember ever being allowed to take a art class ever again. And mind you, this is like 4th, 5th grade, where you would start taking your child to art classes and things like that. Never again. We did, again, every summer after that particular incident, soccer, basketball, sports. And again, I truly believe she was getting off on watching me struggle and fail because she just couldn't stand it. She could not stand that I had something that gave me joy, I guess. I don't even friggin' know. But now, and that was my whole childhood. Her excuses were, well, the typical things, you know what I mean? Like, artists don't make money, you can't make money with art, like, it's not a real career, you can't make real money. I'm like, what the fuck is real money? And what the hell is a real career? But like I said, you get STEM, you can do a STEM major, and that's it. Pick something quote unquote real. Okay, I don't know if anyone has read The Kite Runner, but that theme of being quote unquote real is what is the main character's undoing. And if you haven't read the book, it's essentially there are two brothers who don't know they're brothers, but they're just raised as best friends. And one of them is what his father would not consider to be a quote-unquote real boy. He's academic, he reads, he likes poetry, he's not athletic, he's not athletic, he gets bullied, and his brother, who he believes is his best friend, is a real boy, right? And the reason why they're raised as best friends is because that brother is a half-brother. He's the product of a mistress after the father's mother dies. So I'll just say the legitimate son is like his mom. He's very much so more aligned with things that would be considered more traditionally feminine. And his half-brother is a real boy. He runs, he jumps, he climbs, he gets dirty, he fights back, you know what I mean? And it culminates into this feeling of just being so jealous and feeling so inadequate that he allows his best friend or his brother to be assaulted in a horrific way, because allowing him to be assaulted and allowing his half brother to be assaulted, he finally gets his real boy moment, but he can't enjoy it. So that's kind of what that reminds me of, where you're pushing me to abandon myself, and you're trying to force me to. And again, the father wasn't trying to do that to his son on purpose, but kids pick up on context clues. That's what I'm saying. My mom absolutely doing a version of that on purpose, right? Right, so it's bad being a girl, and it's bad being feminine, and it's bad being creative. So I want you to get a real job. I want you to have real money. I want you to have a real career. And like, real career, real job, real money is this teeny tiny little box that I don't fit into. But instead of it just kind of being a dad trying his best to raise his son by himself in the wake of his wife's death, and maybe not doing an amazing job, not on purpose. It was her trying to, I think honestly, crush my spirit. She was trying to like just get me to wallow, or trying to sort of force or engineer the misery she was wallowing in of her own volition onto me. So I don't know, she wouldn't be lonely, she could project it on me. I don't know, I don't really care. But growing up, that was always something that she was saying. You can't make money, you can't make money, you can't make money. So, and this is the story that I want to tell, because I think it perfectly encapsulates like how my family treated me when I was doing things that were attuned and was doing it excellently, because they are my gifts, right? If someone who is in their, like, a fish swims amazing, right? You could never hope to swim like a fish, but a fish can't climb. So if you're always judging a fish by how it's going to climb, the fish is always going to be a failure. And if you're trying to get a human to swim like a fish, the fish is always going to win. You're simply not designed, you're not built for that activity. So when I was, I think it was 8th grade. It was right before my parents' divorce. I begged my mom, will you please let me do this little craft fair at one of the high schools? I had taught myself how to crochet via the 4-H program back in the Midwest, and I really wanted to at least try and see if I was good enough to at least sell one or two things. So my thing at the time, I was obsessed with crochet stuffed animals. Like, my skill level wasn't to the level of being able to do amigurumi, and if you're not part of like the fiber community, I don't really know how to describe them. They're like really, really like super duper, like almost chibi, but in real life. I guess if you don't know what anime is, it's like super duper cute little animals, right? Little stuffed animals, right? Like perfect little girl fodder. Perfect little girl, like cutesy dream fodder, right? But my skill level wasn't there, so I was kind of doing like these clunky, awkward, sort of like, they were cute in their own respect, but they weren't like well done, because I was 10 and self-taught. So I begged her, and she relented, and she paid, I think it was the $70 booth fee for me to be able to set up my little booth. So I made like chair socks, and I had my stuffed animals, and it was one weekend, it was 2 days, I think. It was 2 days for one weekend, and I worked for like 3 or 4 months to get inventory together, because it was kind of last minute. and I ended up walking away with about $200. And would you believe me if I told you there was not a single good job, there was not a single well done, there was no acknowledgement, there was nothing. Nothing. Nobody was happy for me. Nobody was excited for me. There was not a drop of encouragement to be found. And then I truly think it made my mom jealous because I have $200, right? If I was able to make $200 in 2 days, and the customers were giving me feedback like, oh, these would be cuter with like the little glass eyes, or these would be cuter if they were this color. Well, there's no reason as an 11-year-old I can't just invest 100% of my profits back into my business to improve my product so that next year, or maybe a next craft fair, I have more of what the customer base is looking for. Would you believe that my mom would not buy with the money that I made for myself? She would not take me to go get supplies, and she would not allow me to order anything online. Right. So, and then I think maybe the same year or the next year, she got her dogs. Again, clinging to this white picket fence, 2.5 kids, 2 dogs, perfect fantasy dream of hers. She got her dogs, and guess who became the sole carer for these animals? Yours truly. So I'm training, walking several times a day, doing all the potty training for 2 dogs that cost several $1,000s. So you are completely fine with spending thousands of dollars that we don't have to fulfill this fantasy of yours, but you're not going to let me invest my own money back into my own business because it would not. But you're gonna hear me say this 100 million times. Because there are several bigger moments like that where she has absolutely abused her power as a parent and as an adult to make sure that she's able to rip the rug out from under me and keep me from being able to do things for myself, right? Because she didn't do that for me. And honestly, I could have asked my grandmother for the $70. Do you know what I mean? So, I think that was a point. I think that was a huge frustration for her because I would not just stay down. She couldn't just tell me no. If you told me no, and in my mind there wasn't a good reason for the no, I'd figure it out myself, and that made her angry. But anyway, so she absolutely trampled all over this amazing opportunity for me to be able to start a business at 11 and be pretty well on my way to being self-sufficient as an early adult, to stay in my place as family slave, family housemaid, and battered surrogate emotional wife. Because, let's be honest, there was a lot of emotional incest going on in my relationship with my mom. It was completely inappropriate. She did not interact with me like I was a child. She interacted with me like I was a lover, but there was no physical part of that. It was just the emotional expectations you would have of a partner. Completely inappropriate. So that theme, now that I look back, because I've been trained to blame myself, right? Well, you didn't spend your money wisely. Well, you're just not really good at stuff like that, right? Trying to gaslight me, and honestly successfully, because I didn't understand for a long time how much power she had or what she was doing in the background, to facilitate things, quote unquote, not working out. Because every time I would try and take a step forward, something critical would come crashing down, or like I said, there'd be no money, or she was unwilling to allow me to unwilling to purchase things that I would need. Again, keeping me small, keeping me controlled, trying to sort of force this narrative on me that I was a failure and I couldn't do anything right and I just wasn't capable, when in reality she was engineering those situations, because if she had just left me alone to figure out what to do with the money by myself and not pressed me into dog care servitude, I would have figured it out. And she knew that. And she didn't want that. And I think that's what hurts my feelings the most. For as much as she whimpers and whines and as much as she whimpered and whined and cried about how horrible and terrible her life was and how difficult everything was for her and how she didn't have anybody, she was insistent on those things being real in my life too. Like, why would you do that? Why would you want somebody else to suffer? But again, my mom is not well. She's not been well for a very long time. So a part of my healing process now is to understand that I'm not defective. There's nothing wrong with me, and it really wasn't my fault. I was doing everything in my power as a minor human to be able to set myself up to be successful for what I was attuned to. And I had a parent who was more powerful than me and more crazy, who was dead set at tripping me up, destroying, sabotaging things, pulling the rug out from under me last minute, and just doing everything in her power to keep me stuck, keep me stunted, keep me dependent, and sort of try and drill into my head that I was a loser. When in reality, because she was always forcing the STEM bullshit down my throat, and if you can't do this, you're never gonna get a real job. Again with the real job, again with the real career, again with the real money. And it's like, how was that $200 that I made not real money? Explain that to me. And she can't, because it doesn't make sense outside of her disordered thinking. So a lot of that was trying to keep me small, trying to keep me stuck, trying to keep me dependent, and not like a little bit dependent, like almost to the point where can't feed myself dependent. I'll go into it later, but it got very scary. It got very scary towards the end when I was leaving. Because she was losing her mind. She was losing her mind. As far as she was concerned, me living my own life meant killing her. I truly believe that. I truly believe in her twisted perception. If I were to go off and live my own life, I truly believe somewhere in her mind she felt that was going to be a threat on her life. And that's why she was fighting me with all of this vitriol and cruelty and the level of crazy that it got, because in her mind, she was fighting for her life. There couldn't be, do you know what I mean? It was like a scenario where there can only be one. What? There are two of us! There is me, and there is you. We are different people. We are not, but again, my mom was forever trying to force this enmeshed. And I don't know if anyone's ever I guess it was really a Pavlovian experiment where she would just repeat the weirdest things over and over and over and over and over again, like it was gonna sink in one day. And she's like, stuff like, well, you always wanted to be at home. What? You don't let me leave. You beat me when I go out and do anything. You scream at me. And to be honest, toward the end of my parents' marriage, they were both behaving so erratically. I didn't know if there was going to be a day where I blinked the wrong way and they were going to use that as justification to bash my skull in. It got very scary. So I'm in a situation where I was actually afraid for my life. But she's like, you're just not good at anything. And I'm like, yes, I am. You just do everything in your power to not let me do the thing that I'm good at. And it would make her angry, right? She could not, like, do you know what I mean? It would be like if you had, like, a captive and you were trying to brainwash this captive to believe that you were their real family and that the other people never loved them, right? And she would try that, but at the end of the day, I'm more mentally rigorous. I have much more mental rigor than my mother does. I'm able to take in information and compare it to what's actually happening, not just how I feel in the moment. Now, that's not to say that I don't have some of that deeply embedded in me, because she had me for almost 20 years. There's no fighting that. There's no fighting from birth to through the entirety of puberty and beyond. But at the same time, I have enough mental fortitude to know that it's bullshit. And now that I'm out of that abusive situation, I've been able to heal very quickly. And I credit that to being able to just be like, no, it's not true. Even if the voice was small, and even if I couldn't muster it every day, I could always come back to myself and be like, it's not true. That's not true. And everybody can't do that. But she was bound and determined to make sure that I did not. And I've talked about this with my therapist, and she was like, she didn't want you to outshine her. There was nothing I needed to do to outshine my mom except be happy and be able to enjoy myself and be able to self-soothe and not be a chronic people pleaser. Don't fall into any of those psychological traps, and boom, I did it. I've outgrown you. But that goes more into scapegoating, but I want that to be a separate podcast because it got crazy. It got crazy. But I wanted to say this because if there's anybody out there who can relate to people who just do not want to see you do well for whatever is going on with them emotionally, you existing and enjoying your life is a threat, or is something they feel contemptuous about, or resentful of, or envious of, or react angrily, please know that that's about them and it's not about you. If there's anybody who gets irritated about your joy, be very leery of that person. That person is not safe. That person is not well. There's nothing wrong with you being differently attuned if you aren't and if you're not a STEM person, that's okay. There are so many jobs. We can't all be doctors and lawyers. Who will plunge the toilets? Who will fix the electricity? And who will replace the floor? Who will fix my fridge? Who is going to paint the awesome painting that I have in my house? And don't let anybody make you feel like you're not valuable because you have different gifts than they do. Or gifts at all, for that matter. Do not, please, when you encounter people like that, do not allow them to pull you into their bog of sadness. Because that's what it is. They're miserable, and they are not going to do anything about it because it's too scary, and they want you to be miserable and stuck so it doesn't challenge them and their choice to give up. You are allowed to choose to give up, but you're not allowed to hinder other people who don't want to. You're not allowed to do that. Everyone has a choice. You are allowed to choose. And if you choose to give up, then fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with giving up. But do not be a roadblock for other people. And you're not a loser or defective or bad or wrong because you have different aptitudes or your aptitudes don't fit into what your parents feel is appropriate. Because a lot of the times people don't even care that you actually achieve those things. It's does it make me look good? Does it sound good? Excuse me. Am I going to be able to exploit your income for my own gain? Do you know what I mean? A lot of that goes back to it's about them and it's not about you. So don't take any of that on board. And that's something that I'm personally working through now, is that her insistence that I was a defective loser because I had creative aptitudes and I wasn't someone who had aptitudes in the STEM fields is bullshit and not true. Just because she wasn't going to be able to manipulate and exploit my income in the years to come, or brag to her friends in whatever way, does not mean that I'm a loser. She's a loser. She's a nutcase. And I don't need to be onboarding anything from someone who's nuts like that. We are not... Let this be my year. Let this be our year of not onboarding things from clearly mentally ill people who are not trying to get better. Right? My mom is not healing. She is not going to fix it. She's going to keep going around in circles. And that's her choice. That's her prerogative, but I won't let her I won't let her lead me around in circles too. I have things to do. I have places to be, and there are things that I want. I know who I am. And she has just been able to lead me around the long scenic route because she was my parent. I'm too old for that now. Thank God. Thank God I made it. Thank God I made it to being too old for that shit. Anyway, I have talked for a very long time. I'm gonna have to figure out an outro. But, I don't know. I don't have an outro for y'all yet. But I'll just say this again. Do not onboard the opinions of clearly mentally ill people who are not trying to get better. I just want you to carry that as like your Monday motivation. Your Monday motivation. Alright. Well, I hope we all have a good week. Please stay safe out there. Tschüss!